Hey, thanks as always for the download, for the subscription, for the stream, however you are consuming Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast. I thank you for consuming said podcast. And if you want it to continue, at the rate that it is, I ask you to do me a favor. Look, you guys helped construct the Not Sam studio that we do this podcast out of. If we want to keep production value high, if we want to keep the guests coming in, then please do your part. Support the podcast by making sure, first and foremost, that you subscribe, whether it's on Spotify, on iTunes, on Stitcher, Google Play, however you get this show, make sure that you're subscribed so that new episodes and bonus episodes are sent directly to you each and every time they come out. And go on iTunes, leave us a review, a 5-star rating. All that stuff helps more than you know over on iTunes, and it's free. So why wouldn't you do it? Am I right? I am right. And if you want to see me be right some more, or at least hear me, stay tuned, because Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast starts right now.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast. Introducing your host from New York, here is Sam Roberts.
This is it. Welcome to Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast. It's going to be a big show. It's going to be a fun one. A fun one this week because there's a lot to go over, a lot to talk about, people to talk to. You're going to just love it. I appreciate all you for being here. We are live, as always, from the Not Sam Studios. And boy, oh boy. Hey, first and foremost, thank you all. I got more feedback than I could have possibly imagined on the bonus episode that I put out over Thanksgiving weekend. On Black Friday, I posted a bonus episode where I interviewed Bill McKenna from Mattel and really just focused on the wrestling figure stuff. And I'm aware that there's a lot of us that are big wrestling fans that might not be fans of action figures and memorabilia and all that stuff. I'm not in that category. Anybody that's seen any of the videos, you know, you're only getting a taste of all the wrestling memorabilia and whatnot that I have in this house of mine. But I'm aware that some of you just like to tune in on Monday nights, on Tuesday nights, to access to watch New Japan, whatever you want. Thursdays to watch Impact. Some of you just like watching the show. You might not have T-shirts and posters and toys and belts and all that. Championships, I should say. So, you know, you never know. So I posted my interview with Bill McKenna from Mattel, who is one of the head designers on all the WWE toys that they do. And so many of you, I heard from so many of you that liked the interview, that want to hear more. So we are definitely going to be doing more figure-focused stuff as the weeks and months and years progress here on Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast, and they will all drop as bonus episodes. I won't be doing figure stuff specifically on Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast, but every so often I will drop a bonus figure-centric episode because it's something I'm passionate about. So if you're interested in that, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so that you get these episodes when they come out, because I think it's just a cool thing, and I think it's a fun thing for all of us to talk about, and it really is full circle for me. Because being a 13-year-old with AOL, having a wrestling figure newsletter to come full circle, like 20 years later, and be doing this is kind of, it's really, really an amazing thing whenever I stop and think about it. So I really appreciate you guys making that happen, and all the people that said that they really enjoyed the show, and for Bill McKenna for doing it, and all you guys reaching out to Bill as well. So it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. We're going to have a lot of fun today breaking down everything that's going on. Of course, we'll talk about everything that went on Raw and SmackDown. A little bit of a build towards Clash of the Champions, but we'll talk about Starrcade, because Starrcade was big this week in the sense that most of us didn't get to see it, just saw the clips on the social media platforms. I also want to talk about what's going on with Cody Rhodes and the Young Bucks and taking steps closer to getting 10,000 people to watch them wrestle live, which is just such a huge, huge thing for an independent show to do. Look, there are shows that WWE does that don't have 10,000 people in the audience. So the idea that in 2017, 2018, an independent wrestling show could get 10,000 people in an arena is really a great accomplishment. We'll talk about that and how it looks like that's all going to happen. If you remember months ago when Cody Rhodes was on the podcast, that was right when that topic was first coming up, and we discussed it. So there's new news on that. But before we get to any of that, as is tradition here on Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast, we're going to start with the interview. Yes, X Pac is our guest this week on Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast. One of my absolute favorite guests to have on any show, whether it's the show I'm doing on Sirius XM, whether it's the wrestling podcast, whether it's anything. X Pac is one of my favorite people to talk to. Just a wealth of information, a guy that's seen just about everything there is to see in the last 25 years of pro wrestling, and a guy who's as honest as you will ever find anybody. I mean, almost to a fault. There is nothing about Sean Waltman that is a show, that is fiction, that is anything. He owns himself more than any other person I know. And that's why I wanted to talk to him about what's going on in the world of wrestling right now, but also what's going on with him in the world of wrestling right now, as well as some of the stuff in his past. Always good stories with X Pac. Always a good time. If you remember, we talked to X Pac not too long ago, the last time, when he was talking about the charges, when he no-showed that event and he ended up in jail. We'll get... because I feel like there wasn't a lot of follow-up on that from mainstream news. A lot of mainstream news reported that it happened to him, that he was charged and that he'd spent the weekend in jail, but not a lot of people talked about the outcome of the case, probably because it was a positive outcome for him. But we'll talk about all of that and more this week on Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast. Here he is, the man himself, the 1-2-3 kid, 6-Pac, X-Pac.
And now, the Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast interview.
Well, back once again on Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast, my old pal, and yours at this point, X-Pac is on the phone. X-Pac, what's going on, man?
Oh, Sam, how are you, man? I just got finished doing my show. And, I was just telling you off air that before we started recording, I just got back from Australia yesterday. And had an amazing time over there, man.
It's
incredible.
It seemed like it. I was looking at the photos. Who were you over there with? Like Joey?
Jeez, did you see the card?
Well, I saw Joey Ryan was on it. Austin Aries was on it.
Yeah, Ricochet, Zack Sabre Jr.,
God.
Brian Cage, the Headbangers were there.
That's awesome that the Headbangers were there too.
Right? Yeah. So yes, it was. The wrestling fans in Australia were they were treated to a hell of a show every night, man.
Now, were they more like could you tell that the people in Australia are even more excited about this because most of those guys do not come to Australia all that often?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. You pretty much summed it up. And more people are starting to come now. Because like House of Hardcore, Tommy Dreamer, he's brought House of Hardcore over there a few times, so they're starting to get used to some good wrestling other than WWE,
Yeah.
And man, I'm so happy that I decided to go, Sam, because my trip over there 10 years ago, there were some things about that trip that kind of turned, I had a bad taste in my mouth.
What happened on the 10 years ago?
Oh, just to end, like one of the last part of my tour over there 10 years ago wasn't what I hoped it would be, as far as the promotion and just I don't want to get into that part. It just wasn't what I would have liked to have had as a parting memory of Australia. So, and I get really worked up, Sam. I think you probably noticed that I don't like long flights. I don't like flights in general.
Right.
And so the 15-hour flight was something that actually, like, even 2 weeks prior to going over there, I was like, being irritable and kind of grouchy, and I started noticing that,
Really? So, like, is it like an anxiety thing? Like or you just start to get tense because you realize that this thing is coming and you hate it so much?
Yeah, which isn't definitely a form of anxiety.
Yeah.
And and really a lot of it was me just getting myself worked up because the flight wasn't that bad.
Well, what'd you do on it? Like, how did
Well,
you? I think a lot of people don't fly well. How did you handle 15 hours as a guy that doesn't do that?
I just bunch of edibles. I just took them before I went through security.
Yeah, you learned your lesson. This time you took them right before you
Yeah.
went through security. So that's all it was. You just did edibles and then you could just
Yeah.
chill out and sleep for some of it and watch a movie or whatever.
Yeah, it was fine. It was like me and the middle seat, empty middle seat, and then Joey Ryan in the window.
Oh, that's
He
cool.
didn't, and he didn't move the whole time. I was like, damn, man, don't you have to piss or anything like that?
He didn't move the entire flight?
No, man, he didn't get up once.
He really does have a magic penis, doesn't he?
I think so. Yeah.
That's
I
amazing.
teamed with Joey. Over there. We had a 6-man with another guy that was really good.
So
we did the suck it, touch it, suck it, touch it, suck it, touch it thing with their opponent. Yeah.
Well, how do you get ready for something like that? Because depending on what show you're doing, like you could do a show like that where it's just chock full of like super sort of, I don't know, young, active guys that just kind of, tear themselves apart every single show, and guys who have a reputation for pretty heavy work rate.
Like I was when I was at their stage in my career.
Exactly right. And guys that probably, grew up or once they got in the business were watching a bunch of Lightning Kid tapes to kind of get, for inspiration and stuff like that. There's those shows, then there's also the shows that are just like nostalgia shows that are probably a little easier. When you realize you're on the show, you're teaming with Joey Ryan, Ricochet's also on the show, all these guys are on the show.
Yeah.
Do you realize you're going to have to bring an entirely new bag of tricks?
No, I add a couple that were already in my bag. I just don't break them out all the time.
Gotcha. These are the break in case of emergency?
Yeah, well, and the thing is Sam, man, my feet still work really good when it comes to kicking. I'm not gonna lie. I my jump spin in the corner I don't do as much anymore, but the other ones, man, they're right on the money. So that's like I get a couple of really solid spin kicks and some of my other signature stuff, and the people are really happy.
And isn't it great how popular?
And here's the thing, Sam.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go out there and match athleticism with any of those guys.
Right.
And I'm not even trying, and the people don't want to really see me do that,
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing
they
worse
might want
than
to see me do it, but they're not expecting it.
Well, yeah, and it's also like I think people are aware of like what your skill set is and why you're coming to see X Pac on a show, right?
Yeah, for sure.
It's got to be nice for
everyone.
you, like as in style as kicks are in wrestling right now. Like that's got to be a cool thing because that's something that you do really well, and you can go kick for kick with people. And kicks weren't always like when you were doing them when you were younger. In mainstream wrestling, kicks were not a thing like that.
Well, no, because no one knew how to do them. No one knew how to incorporate them properly into wrestling to make them like there's been a lot of really good martial artists that have come into wrestling, and then when they try to throw kicks in, they just don't know how to do it properly in the context of a wrestling match.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
you kind of have to be well versed at both.
Seen it, but a lot of times they look terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, because they're just trying to squeeze in this thing that's it's a different skill set. It doesn't make any sense to do it right now. The guy wasn't ready to take it in the right way.
Yeah, and then martial arts, like a lot of the martial arts you train in, when you're doing forms or when you're sparring, you're taught to do it with like controlled kicks, and so then when a lot of times a guy gets in the ring, and he's you can tell he's missing, like purposely missing,
Yeah.
extending the leg before he makes contact and things like that just when you're practicing like a lot. I guess that's what I'm trying to get at, Sam.
Mm-hmm.
Is a lot of guys, they throw their kicks like they're practicing in the matches.
Right.
Does that make any sense?
It makes perfect sense because they are trying not to make full contact, but then the audience can see that they're clearly like a novice can see the difference between a real kick and a practice kick.
Yeah.
So it's not a wrestling kick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So is that why?
I've never been that guy that smacks the side of the leg. Like that's the big in vogue thing to do. I never thought my kicks needed an extra little slap on the leg.
You never do it at all?
Never. I've never done it in my life.
So then if people are now used to that sound, right? Like that, like they're used to, like, that's what a kick sounds like in wrestling.
Yes.
So is there, do you worry that like the crowd isn't going to react properly to your kicks because that slapping sound that they're used to?
It still makes that sound. It just doesn't come from me slapping my leg.
Does it come from foot coming in contact with face?
Usually. or the hand. Well, I'm not going to give all my trade secrets away because I don't want to spoil the show for everyone when they're watching.
Oh, that's great. So like they hear the sound and they're looking at you and they're going, he's not slapping his thigh. I know all the tricks. He's not slapping his thigh. He must be really kicking the shit out of him.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then when the guy gets up and his nose is bleeding, then you probably wonder how that happens too, right?
Yeah, what's the trick there?
Yeah.
So is that what you concentrate on, like when you pull out? Because I would imagine on like a show where maybe it's not so crucial that your work rate is like crazy. It's just kind of one of those retro shows or whatever. You can probably get away with, a Bronco Buster and an X Factor and suck it, and you can kind of be done for the night, right?
Well, I always try to do the same. Like, I bring it. I'd like to think that I bring it in those situations as much as I do in the say like the Australia situation.
Uh-huh.
But there's variables like such as how hot the crowd is,
right,
and who I'm in the ring with,
right.
And sometimes you don't know who you're going to be in there with, and on a lot of independent shows, there's guys with just a bit of experience, and not their fault, but you kind of got to work accordingly.
So is the wrestling martial arts connection how you became friends with Steve Blackman? Because I remember it was like a couple years ago. We were doing a show or something together, and we were talking about you rooming with Steve Blackman years ago, and like it was the first time I had ever heard that you guys were even cool. Like, not that you weren't cool, but that you guys were friends like that.
No, here's what it was when I went to LA, and it was around the same time I got together with Joni.
Uh-huh.
And Steve and so when I saw Joni again, Steve was there too, like at their Noki Dojo.
Oh.
And he was in town and he was going to be staying there, and I had this apartment, and so I'm like, Steve, I got 2 bedrooms, man. You take one of them. And so Steve lived there.
Oh,
I
see.
He would come in and out of town.
But he just always had a place to stay. That's cool.
Yeah, and I kept that place, even though I was with Joni and I lived with her, because obviously, the way things were, I needed a place to stay every couple of weeks.
It was unpredictable.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was the thing. I was looking at photos of the Australia tour, and not only was it like, wow, look at all the people were there, but dude, you look like you're in amazing shape. Like, I don't remember you, especially the muscle mass that looks like it's on you now. I don't even remember you having that kind of muscle mass on you, when you were in your WWE days. Oh, no, I did, for sure. I just wasn't, and I just didn't know how to, nutrition-wise, diet-wise, I didn't know what I was doing. Oh, I see. So you had the muscle, but it was covered up with like a little bit of baby fat. Sure, gotcha. And even that, no, not even that so much as just I'm much leaner now. Right. It just looks different, and I weigh a lot less, than I did at my peak weight. So, I'm under 200 right now, and that's a good spot. So you're a legit cruiserweight. Yeah, but so are a lot of people that say they're over 200 pounds. It's not that. I mean, that used to be the thing that, you had to make up the bullshit weight because you wanted to, it had to be something over 200. Right. Right. Yeah, no, I remember growing up, like when you would watch the show, if anybody got introduced as being under 200 pounds, like as a kid, I was conditioned to be like, what's he even doing in the ring? He's not going to be. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like, how's he even in there? Yeah, he has no business. He's going to get killed. Right. Yeah. Do you get after what happened when you were supposed to be? I think when you got arrested, you're going to England, right? Yeah. Do you get worried at all when you're going on cross-country flights like that? Was there any leftover trauma, even though that all ended exactly as it should have ended, and we talked about that? Do you still, like, when you're going into an airport and it's a cross-country thing and it's like, oh, shit, the last time I did this, blah, 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 like, does that pop up in your head?
I do. I trust me. Yeah, it does.
Yeah, especially because, like, and we've talked about this before, the press that surrounded you getting in trouble was big. The press that surrounded you being cleared of everything was like, you know, a breadcrumb compared to all that. So
you think is that how you perceived it?
That's how I took it, and maybe I was sensitive to it because, like, I knew you and knew that, like, you know, that I felt like people were trying to vilify you for things that you had done in the past, and I've always felt that the fact that, like, you're honest, like, brutally honest about your entire life and kind of own everything probably more than any other person I know, let alone any other person in the business. I don't like when that stuff comes back to bite people because the most you can ask for somebody is for them to be honest. And when you see a person who has been honest kind of get bitten by that and have that information used against them, it bothers me. So when you were cleared, I kind of wanted, you know, it to be shouted from the rooftops like, hey, remember this thing that you all were talking about? This is the outcome here. And so that's why I felt like I definitely did not feel like the happy ending, not even the happy ending, the justified ending matched.
Yeah, because there was no winners in that situation. I didn't finally win a prize. Like,
right.
You know,
right.
Nobody gave all the money back that I lost because of that, or my, you know, damage to my, you know, somewhat successfully repaired reputation.
Exactly.
So,
you just got to not go to jail for not doing meth. Like that was your prize.
Yeah, I remember when I sent, you know, when the word came out that I really didn't do it. I remember getting a text from Hunter from Triple H going, "Congratulations." I'm like, congratulations on not being a fuck up.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, dude. I'm sorry about cussing.
No, don't worry about it. You're totally good.
But,
yeah. You're like,
it was really like, right? Come on.
I guess, but like,
if that's what you got to congratulate me on, holy crap.
Yeah, congratulations. You know, you didn't get railroaded. You know, like you made it through. But yeah, so you just kind of are like, you're in the airport and you're like, oh my God, I hope this doesn't happen again.
And every time I come back in now, I get messed with.
Really? Still?
You know, they pull me aside every time.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Does it make you? It's got to make you not want to travel.
It sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then, like, you know, I explained to them because they're nice.
Right.
They're very nice.
But you're on some kind of list that they have to.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and then I explained to them what happened, and then they're, like coming back in yesterday. Like, I'm like, you guys know who Delgado is? And the one up looked at me like, oh yeah, that asshole.
So they know.
Yeah.
We were talking, I don't know, maybe a year ago, maybe 6 months ago or something, and you were talking about winding down and not really wrestling anymore. And then the last time I saw you, I think it was at the No Mercy pay-per-view in LA. That's when you were like, you know, I've been thinking about it, and I'm going to keep going. I can keep going, and I'm going to. And you seemed really happy about it, and it made me happy. Is that where you're at right now? That you just figure, like, you know, you're in great shape. Why not keep going?
Yeah, it seems like people still want to see me. I'm not embarrassing myself in the ring, and I feel good. I've got some injuries and that, but you know, people don't know about them when they see me. You know what I mean? They're not, like, I don't come in the ring and people aren't, like, feeling bad for me that I'm still in there. You know what I mean?
Right. You're not like a broken shell of what the kid used to be.
Yeah. So, and I love it, Sam, and especially when it's stuff like this tour of Australia. You know, when you're in there with really good guys, and everything just comes together right. The people are happy. You know, it's just it's when the magic happens, man. And I love still being part of the magic. Do
you like that the guys that you're working with grew up watching you, or do you wish it's like, no, we're supposed to be peers? What do you mean you grew up watching me?
I dig it.
Yeah.
Okay, because I treat them like peers and they treat me that way.
Yeah.
It's just fine.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's that's the healthy way to look at it.
Yeah. Because I really love being around all these young guys.
Well,
You know?
it's interesting because I feel like, especially on the independents, there's this new passion for wrestling. Like guys, especially like the Joey Ryans of the world, and then you look at like the Bucks and Cody Rhodes and guys like that, like they are figuring out how to make real money on their own, and it's only fueling their passion harder to just be like, wait, like these are guys who have figured out, and I think that there's a whole generation of guys that are figuring out that they can treat this thing like an art form and still make a living and do everything that they want to do, and it's got to be a feeling of fulfillment that is kind of rare in the industry.
Yeah, you think? I
Yeah.
mean, it's very rare because, well, I mean, look at the thing. They can go direct to their fan base now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, being the Elite, that show.
Yeah.
You know, things like that. Okay, you know, I was just talking about on my show today about how those guys are trying to get a 10,000 seat venue.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, man, come on. I love that.
I do too.
They're willing to take a chance on themselves like that.
I think it's amazing. I mean, I think it's amazing that like, and it goes back into the culture. Like, I think wrestling when it's at its best is a reflection of the culture at large. And I think it goes back into, like what we do in podcasting, where it's like, you know what, we can go out there and just hit our audiences on our own. We can build these things on our own. People have access to tools. And I think the smartest thing that guys like the Bucks and Cody and anyone in any industry really can do is, while you're young and while you're talented and while there's opportunities to make money, take money that you've made doing it and reinvest it in yourself. Like take the money that you've made wrestling and put on this show and do it your way because you can.
It takes a lot of guts to do that, but those things, when they pay off big. You know? And I just, I like seeing, the talent also being the promoter.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking about this too. It reminds me of like the boxers that have done that, like the Oscar De La Hoyas and, the Mayweathers.
Yeah.
It just, hey man, it just, levels the playing field even more,
Definitely. And it like, it gives that opportunity because I would imagine that wrestlers they're aware of, this is what I've been looking for. This is what the other guys have been looking for. And this is what we can now deliver on. These, like, they know what's missing, right?
Yeah. Yep. And I just the fact that guys have enough, they believe in themselves enough not to take that call with that, opportunity to go make some guaranteed money and, be in the big time, quote unquote, big time.
Yeah.
That's impressive to me,
Yeah.
Guys are doing that.
How is Austin Aries on the tour? Because Austin Aries is a guy who just recently left the land of opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, man, he's looking really good in the ring, and he's still, Austin Aries, the one and only.
Yeah.
Did you see? Did you see the deal where he and I had the tag match and the ring was a piece of shit?
No, what happened?
Oh yeah, no, he cut a huge promo on the ring.
Oh my God, I gotta look it up.
Oh yeah, because we had the match, a hell of a tag match. But he got gaffed open by the ring, not and so like I do my spiel afterward. Oh, thank you guys so much for coming, blah blah blah, and love you all, and then I'll go into the. Oh, it's an honor to be in there with, Austin Aries. I'm a big fan. So then he grabs I was getting ready to take it home with I got 2 words for you part. And then he grabs the mic and like puts me over a bit and like talks about wrestling. And then he turns heel on the ring and says, this is our, he talks about the stage, this being our stage.
Yeah.
And how this stage is a effing disgrace. Like, and then people didn't know what he was saying.
They didn't understand?
You know, they didn't understand what the deal was. So it was just kind of sucked the air out of the room.
Oh, because they probably
just dropped the mic and walked off and left me standing in the ring.
Yeah, and then you're like, and if you're not down with that, we don't know if we're down with it. We don't know what he was talking about.
Yeah. So like, I still did that.
Yeah.
But, like I threw, and I'm like, I think my partner is mad because the ring hurt more than our opponents did.
Yeah, because they probably.
And I still did the 2 words thing, and still got a reaction.
Sure.
It was
just weird.
But, Austin was great, and I let Austin Aries be Austin Aries.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people can say, oh, he was a dick to somebody at the airport, or hey, you know what? I'll take Austin Aries. However, I'm fine with all that.
Yeah, I saw that.
Let everyone else be nice.
And it does really feel like it's one of those things where, like, I don't know, he sits there, he signs autographs all day, and then he has one bad interaction, and that becomes the story, right?
Yeah, he did have a point too. I mean, it's just like, I would be a little bit nicer than he is about it. That's
right.
Just me.
Right. Well,
he definitely had a point with those guys. If you were there, you would understand what I was saying.
Well, it's also, I mean,
we're talking about some guys for the people that don't. That this is too inside baseball for.
Yeah.
And when we were going from one town to the next, and we were going to the airport, there were some fans that were waiting at the airport, and they were at the show the night before, and everyone else paid for stuff at the merch line, and that's how that's always part of the way we support ourselves.
Sure.
And so Austin took exception what guys were camped out at the airport, and
Yeah. I mean,
he mentioned it to them.
I get that.
Like
it's a scummy thing. It's I hate when I go to the autograph signings, like the conventions. I hate the people that are waiting outside the convention hall.
Yes.
Waiting for people to leave, and it's like, come on, guys, like these guys flew all the way in. This is how they're making their living this weekend, and like to wait outside and try to guilt them into giving you for free what they're trying to sell is like you're putting guys in a position where they either have to be dickheads or they're cheating all their fans that they just charged out of something that they're giving you for free.
But the person that brought them in and paid for us to be there.
Yeah. No, yeah, I always.
But screw everyone else, right?
Right, exactly. I got to get my picture. I got to get my autograph and my picture. So what difference does it make? I had a question. I feel like I listened to Pritchard's podcast, and
yes,
like we've talked about your stories and everything, but I feel like Conrad brings up you putting shit in people's bags and on sandwiches and stuff like a lot. Did you play that many pranks with shit in your time? Like, was that what you were known for, or was it just something you did a couple times?
A couple of times, but they were big things, and it's definitely okay. Like, it's hard for me to, get on anyone for talking about that when I definitely at one time was bragging about stories like that. I thought it was cool that I did that, and I hate to say that, Sam. I hate to admit that,
Well, I mean, yeah, I feel like it's tough for you because I laugh at the stories. I think the stories are funny, but I think the reason I think that they're funny is, number one, I feel like it was a different time, and number two, I feel like you were a completely different person. Like, I don't associate you with the person in those stories, so it's almost like we're laughing at a guy who did this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, somebody with their head still up their own ass.
Right.
Because I don't think I was a bad person ever, but I did some really shitty things at one time.
Is that a pun? Yeah.
No. And here's the thing, Sam. It's, I was always kind of awkward, like, and we all want to fit in, you know? And when you're 19 years old and 20 years old and you're put in a situation where you're with all of these guys, a lot of them you watched when you were growing up,
right?
And you're trying to fit in, you're trying to belong, and that was really important to me. And, so, you do these things in a situation like that. And I can't speak for anyone but myself, just to try to do just that, just to fit in and be accepted.
Yeah, I also think that people don't really take into account how young you actually were, because like when I think of stuff I did in high school to try to get people to laugh, because like, I wasn't an athletic guy, but if I could get somebody to laugh, it was like, okay, good, I'm in, I got them. And like, I cannot sit there and stand behind as a 34-year-old guy. I can't stand behind the things that I did when I was in high school to try to get my friends to laugh, like that, because you're stupid. You know what I mean? You do dumb things because you're like, yeah, but I'll be accepted if I do this.
Yeah. And the thing is, Sam, is like, okay, the thing with the Mark Henry thing, I wasn't even there for that. Like, if that actually did happen, it for sure wasn't me, because I wasn't even there. But, but I still get associated with that because of the nation, the domination parody thing,
Right. Now, did you ever, because like when I think, because the story is like that they put like shit on his sandwich, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. When I think of that, the only thing I can think of is, especially a young Mark Henry, like he would want to rip someone's head off, and that's a guy who actually has the ability to rip a person's head off. Did you ever do anything that led to somebody like wanting to like really beat you into oblivion?
Probably. Yeah. I want to say that it was when I got a lock and chain. Yeah. And locked Adam Bomb stuff to the ceiling.
See, that is such balls, because you think about it, like you said, you're not only are you a young guy, because that had to be like 94, 95, but you're a small guy, and Adam Bomb is a giant.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Good-sized fella.
So you took a chain and a lock and locked his stuff to the ceiling?
Yeah, and he wasn't happy too, because he kind of knew I did it because somebody, I think, stooged on me.
But it was the thing that, like, because of who you hung out with, you were protected, so nobody could get you?
I'm sure that had something to do with it.
Yeah. So they were doubly pissed, because it's like this little asshole just chained my stuff to the thing, and because of who he hangs out with, now I can't retaliate.
Yeah, probably. But I worked with him a lot back then too, and I made him look pretty damn good in the ring. He wasn't very good to work with. But that doesn't give me the right to be a dick like that. So.
No, I mean, it's still like, if you take all of that out, right?
But boy, does he ever still carry those resentments around, man. I've seen some of the stuff he said. Well, that's, oh my God. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, he really still feels that way?
Is he still pissed?
All these years? Yeah.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure.
Doesn't that?
I get it, man. I get it, but
I guess because it kind of blows your mind.
That sucks.
Yeah.
It sucks that somebody carries that kind of resentment around, because I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. And there's people that deserve it from me, and I still don't.
Yeah. I guess that's right. Like, if you're going to let go of the stuff that you did, you kind of also have to let go of resentments, right? Like, you can't be pissed at other people for doing other things to you. You kind of just have to let it all go and be like, yeah, I'm moved on.
Because if you still let them bother you, eventually you're going to end up going back to self-medicating, things like that.
So is that when you started getting sober, or when you started cleaning up, is that when you had to be like, you know what, I got to leave everything in the past?
I don't think, Sam, it wasn't a situation where I had that one moment where I thought that. It's just how it happened. Now, I learned that that's what you had to do.
Right.
But, it just, you work on those things, and you work on being over them. And you say, I forgive that person, even though maybe you're not quite there yet, including ourselves. Because, I've tried to forgive myself forever, man. And that's, I've done a pretty good job lately with it. But
what was tougher? Because of, like you said, because everything you did, and I think I can hear it in your voice, but was it, I would imagine it was probably a lot tougher to forgive yourself for the things that you did that people are even still mad at you about than it was to forgive other people.
Not even, it's not even close. So I can't even compare the two.
Yeah.
It's no it's really compared to Forgiving Myself, even the worst one. And I won't tell you, and I won't share what it is with people. But I'll tell you, like, out there.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, that's not fair to say that, right?
But you know what?
It's just, it's one of those things that's a little too personal.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, you've shared quite a bit, so I don't think if anybody's going to be mad at anybody for not sharing, I don't think it would be fair to be mad at you.
But they're still forgiven,
right,
Sam. And Forgiving Myself was just something that, I really didn't make a ton of progress until I came out here to LA and I started seeing the hypnotherapist that Kevin Undergaro and Maria Menounos hooked me up with.
Wow, so we're talking about like in the last year.
Yeah, I mean, I was making progress before that, but all the really good stuff happened lately.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah, it is.
and obviously it's having a good effect. Are the promoters now different than they were like 10 years ago? I mean, it just feels like independent wrestling is at such a better place from a fan's perspective now than it has been for a long time. Are there less scumbag promoters kind of running around and ruining it for people?
Yeah, there's still a few of them that are kind of still hanging around, and some of them are kind of more in like the Northeast area, like up in your neck of the woods. Just some of the older ones, that are just kind of still hanging on. But like the newer ones that have the promotions that like are kind of, critically acclaimed. Is that how you should put it?
Sure. Yeah.
Run by newer generation of people that aren't stuck in that carny mentality of, let's work let's con the people. Let's try to see how much money we can get out of, that whole mentality. And it's all about how much money we can take from the people and, not as much concentrating on, what kind of an amazing product we can put together, a big giant masterpiece of work of art.
Did you see the War Games takeover?
I did. I did most of it.
What'd you think of did you see the War Games match?
I didn't see it like from start to finish without taking my eyes off it, but mostly yes.
What'd you think of it?
I really liked it.
Yeah.
I wish they would have put the roof on the cage.
Okay, see, that's a great, because like I'm watching. First of all, there were a couple things that I liked, and you could tell me your thoughts as an actual performer. But like when I saw the steel platform that they put between the two rings, I was like, I felt like that little thing, that little detail was genius, and I couldn't believe that nobody had thought of it before. Like I loved.
Oh sure.
I loved that filler.
Oh,
but,
to make it so you wouldn't break your ankles trying to walk in between both rings.
Yeah. And then they ended up utilizing it because then they could slam the guy on it or whatever. But that's the first thing that I thought, that it's got to be so much safer. But I thought that taking the roof off the cage was kind of an asset, not because I wanted to see like, Adam Cole jumping off of it or whatever. Like, I mean, that was cool, but I thought that like, for instance, like the spot where they do the back body drop from one ring into the other, like you wouldn't be able to get high enough and get your feet up in the air if the roof was on. Like I thought for moves like that, or like,
I think you would on that one. That roof was that cage was a lot higher than the
WCW one.
War Games, yes. Plus, here's the thing, Sam. If I was in War Games, I was in not the very last one, but the one before that, the WCW one, and I loved having that roof on because when Mongo got in there, he shot me in and gave me a big belly bump and like backdropped me up into to where my back hit the cage.
Oh, and then you can like go and hit your back on the cage
and slam me into the mat on the way down. And I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think I kind of remember that because then it makes Mongo look like this monster, and it makes you you just look like you just took like the thrashing of a lifetime.
Oh yeah.
And there is more of that sort of like, I can't get out of this thing. Like it almost feels claustrophobic when you're watching it in a good way, not in a bad way. Like that, like all this sort of humanity and action is packed into this contained thing.
Now I don't want to like harp on the roof not being there, because like I saw in my like Twitter timeline like one particular person that they just kept harping on the fact that there was no roof, and it was still really good.
Yeah, I thought so too.
That's my one thing, my preference. That's all.
I thought it ranked, as far as War Games matches go, I thought it ranked pretty high on the list, because there's a lot of bad War Games matches.
Because that's just what I was going to say. The match that I was in, the War Games match that I was in, was one of the best ones they ever had.
Yeah.
Because like the early ones, it was just guys going in there and chopping on each other and doing what they used to do back then.
Right. I think
they weren't really thinking about, let's put this match together. Okay, this part of the match. They didn't do it as much back then.
Well, it was also like just good guys versus bad guys, right? It wasn't like this.
Yeah.
There wasn't a story really going on.
There was no peaks and valleys in the match, no comeback, no heat. Like, it was just like, get everyone in there, and then once everyone's in there, let's figure out how to go home. And let's beat J.J. Dillon.
Yeah, exactly. I thought it was goofy at first, like when they said they were going to do the thing with the shark cages, but then I actually thought that it added a lot of drama to it, because in the old War Games matches, like you'd see the guy ready to open the door right before the buzzer went off. So there was never any sort of like, oh, who's it going to be? Which one? There's this random thing. Like you knew before the buzzer went off who was going in. But in this one, they almost did it like the Elimination Chamber.
Yeah. Hey, I was like pretty much everyone else that saw the Alistair Black.
Yeah.
Velveteen Dream match, man. I was really high on that match.
It was really good. I think people thought it would be pretty good and were even surprised at how good it was. Even the people with high expectations were surprised at how good it was.
Because Alistair Black has upped his game since he's been there. Since his first match that I saw him have there on his debut, for everyone to see, between then and now, amazing how much like when he got to the end of the match and his like comeback, like almost like his babyface style comeback that he did toward the way that thing flowed and the way it kept the people into it, like that's something that wasn't one of his stronger parts of his game when he first got there.
And it's really interesting because a guy like that, obviously, he's had a pretty major career outside of NXT, and there are people who come in with this background outside of NXT and like really don't develop. You know what I mean? There are people that
they think they already got it all figured out.
Precisely. And so it's awesome to see a guy who's like, oh, let me now take this and just allow it to be the foundation and start building and building and building on that.
Yep.
Are you so is he probably the guy that, like, coming off that show, is Alistair Black the guy that you were looking at like, yeah, that's the dude?
His stock rose more than anyone else's on that show, I thought.
It's amazing just that match got talked about as much as it did, because when you're on a show with a great title match that had a surprise ending, a War Games match, and the women's Fatal 4-Way, and that's the match that people talk about, that's pretty unbelievable.
Yeah, like also Patrick has to be given a ton of credit, man.
Huge,
He's doing fantastic.
Yeah,
I didn't even know it was him.
Really?
I didn't even know it was him. I'm gonna tell you right now. I know it's kind of crazy, and I know him from Maryland Championship Wrestling.
That's awesome.
I didn't know it.
You'd probably love to hear that.
Yeah.
You wonder with him, though, if how the Velveteen Dream, like, the TakeOver show was the first time that I kind of saw how the Velveteen Dream could theoretically translate onto the main roster, but through no fault of Patrick's, through more just like, what's happened in the past and what the system is, I do worry that character doesn't translate to the main roster. You know?
You mean because of just how like other people, what do you want to call it, when they've brought other people up to the main roster, how it's gone for them?
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of guys that, like, you look at it and it's just not like, the Ascension was like an intimidating, scary team in NXT, and Tyler had a hell of a time before Tyler Breeze, before Breezango was a thing, and he was a legit dude in NXT. So I do worry that like those guys that are kind of character heavy are going to have a difficult transition getting to them when they get to the main roster, not because of their work, but because of the character.
That's a really good point, man. I hope that's not the case with him. Because I think that's a big time act, regardless of whether it's NXT, whether it's Raw, SmackDown, or anywhere.
And I think something he does really well is like that could be a cheesy Prince ripoff, but it's not but it's because of him that it's not. Like he owns that character and like completely embodies it and lives it to the point where, as over the top and ridiculous as it is, you believe it coming from that guy. That's probably why you didn't recognize the dude that you knew playing it, right?
That is why. And there's something very authentic about how he's doing this, and it makes me want to think that it's been there all the time.
Yeah. Do you
think?
Yeah. Do you? I'm sure I ask you this every time, but it just seems like is a goal of yours to do something with WWE in terms of backstage or developing talent or putting together matches or anything like that? Is that something you want to do, or do you prefer staying in your lane that you're in right now?
I'm pretty good right now. I would do that if they asked me and they said they needed me to help out with that. I would do anything they asked me to do. I would do my best to accommodate them.
Yeah.
However, I don't know. I'm pretty good right now.
Yeah.
Sam, I've got, here's the thing. If I get to the point where I could pass their physical and that,
mm-hmm.
I do want to go back and finish up in the WWE ring.
Oh, so you want to work another match in WWE?
Oh, hell yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I guess
for sure could do it. I could do it right now. I could do it if I could pass the physical.
Did you start to have that feeling at that WrestleMania where you did the run-in, or did you have that before?
No, I kind of knew then.
Yeah,
but I'm in better shape to do it now.
Oh yeah, I mean,
yeah,
I mean, anybody that's seen your Twitter or like I've said, like it's pretty clear that the shape that you've gotten in is amazing.
Yeah.
Well, listen.
People will tell me, Sam, they'll go, "Oh, another run," and I'm like, "Yeah, as long as it's just a sprint." I'm not really I'm not training for a marathon.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple of matches, but not full-time road schedule. No.
We should try. I mean, Royal Rumble's in Philly. You should start pulling on people's ears and being like, "Hey, why don't you bring me down to Philly? Let me jump in at number 28 or something like that."
Or something.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Very cool, man. Well, if you guys aren't already aware, X Pac does an amazing podcast called X Pac 12360, where it's really good because not only do you interview guys and you do it from the perspective that we've been talking about this entire time, in terms of a guy who has lived it but is still living it and is super aware of the product and everything, or the business, I should say, not the product. But you also give a lot of insight into current day stuff. And for me, I think there are a lot of podcasts where guys give their insight to current day stuff, but they don't really watch the current day stuff, and you can kind of tell. Yeah. But yours is really interesting and insightful, and you look at things from a different perspective, and you look at different details that even even when we just talk like face to face, and you tell me what you think of certain matches or whatever, it's stuff that after 30 years of watching, I didn't even notice because. Yeah. Because I haven't lived what you've lived. I don't have your perspective. But if you guys want to see that, it's X Pac 12360. It's on iTunes. It's on YouTube. And it's definitely a good podcast to subscribe to. And then are there any shows or anything like that coming up that people should be aware of?
I do have one. I think it's December 30th in AAW in Chicago. That's
Great.
That's one of those promotions. That's one of those ones where they have the new mentality and they're not just out there, Carney style trying to, just get the money.
Yeah.
They're trying to go out there and put on, masterpieces every time they put on a show. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm doing that December 30th. And, like you were talking about my show, Sam, and one of the things that I'm proud about is I don't go negative. Like, I have in the past, obviously I've had my, on shoot interviews or different appearances and stuff where, I've been negative or I've talked down about people, but like, it's just something I just don't do anymore. If it comes out, it's very rare. I'm just, if any, I just, hopefully people, if they haven't seen or listened to the show, they'll at least take that away from it.
Yeah, and it's cool to see too, because if you're paying attention to it, it's pretty clear that the reason that you're not doing that is because you're in a better place. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So
exactly, man.
Yeah.
Exactly, Sam. And the one thing before I go, I just, so many people I know are still living in the past, and it's just not a good place to stay, Sam.
Yeah.
It's really not, man. And sometimes life, like our life right now, sucks so bad that we have to spend all our time there in the past, and that sucks. And I just that's one of my hope for people, for my generation and the older guys, is they can get where I'm at as far as that goes.
I think a big part of it is doing what you do, which is embracing what's going on now. You know what I mean? Like really just being like, this is, what I did was awesome. This is also awesome. What's going on now? Like just kind of keep evolving.
Because I like the stuff that I did back in the day better doesn't mean that this stuff sucks now.
Right. And like,
it doesn't have to be binary thinking, like
precisely.
You don't have to be like that. So
yeah, and you don't have to bring it up. Like just because you see something that you like doesn't mean you have to then bring up, but I also did stuff that was good. It's like, we know, but we're talking about this other thing right now.
Yeah. Hopefully you'll never hear me talk like that, Sam.
Yeah.
Because people they know what I did.
Right.
I don't need to, blow my own horn.
Do you real quick before I get you off, because you've been very gracious with your time, but do you are you kind of amazed that I feel like you as the way wrestling fans view you've evolved more. Like you went through, and I think we've talked about this maybe before, but maybe I think it was off air probably. Like it's very cool to see that now X Pac is like really viewed as like a guy that people have a lot of love for and a legend and everything. And I think, you went through that time more when you were still active or right after you left WWE, where like X Pac heat was the term and it was a thing, and it was like and it was like X Pac sucks and blah blah blah, and it's just cool. And before that, it had been like 1 2 3 Kid is the man, X Pac is great, like it was good, and then it was not great, and then it went back to really good, and I think
Sam,
yeah.
Sorry, finish what you were going to say.
Well, I just think that the problem that a lot of people get to is in that part where it's not that great. Yeah. Because, because there's been good before this, because people are at an age or whatever it is, they don't think that there's this other act that's beyond that where it gets good again.
Yeah.
And I think that it sucks when people can't get there. You know what I mean?
It's okay though. It really is, man. And you would hope that people could, but it is okay. And when the whole X Pac heat and the X Pac sucks thing was a big thing, I was kind of living up to that and how I was living my life, Sam.
That's interesting. Yeah.
So
yeah, you were.
I'm not living that way anymore, and lo and behold, you don't hear people saying that as much.
Right.
It's funny how that shit works.
Yeah, that maybe at a certain time X Pac did suck, and now he doesn't. So that's really funny.
I put out a tweet one time because I was just thinking about somebody said to me, "Oh, it's tough to be a straight white male these days."
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like rolling my eyes, because of all the different things that are happening, with sexual harassment. And so I put out this tweet and I said, it sucks to be a man these days. if you suck at being a man.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then somebody came back to me with like, about, something that I did in the past that sucked. And I said, that's when I sucked at being a man.
Right. That's how I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just because we did something that, that sucked don't mean, we can't comment on other things,
Right. Especially if
I
act
like I was,
Right, and you've gotten past that. You're not still actively doing those things that suck. Right.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, and I'm also like holding out hope for those people that suck that they can get better too.
Right.
Because I did.
Yeah, and I mean, look, if you can do it, I don't see what excuse anybody else has, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Yes, trust me.
Well, dude, I always really appreciate you talking and being on the show, and I know that the audience really does too. So. Thanks a lot. Everybody check out the podcast, and Chicago, be down there at the end of December, and thanks a lot, man.
Thank you, Sam. Oh, one more thing, man.
Yeah.
I'm really happy that that you stood up for me, man, when that arrest thing happened, and that could have gone, not that I would let anyone do that, but you took a chance. That could have, backfired and made you look foolish, and I'm really grateful for you doing that.
Yeah, man, I felt strongly about it, and I'm happy to do it anytime, man.
Thanks, Sam.
All right, buddy. I'll talk to you later.
Have an awesome night, man.
You too.
Here is Sam Roberts.
Oh, it's always good to have X Pac on this show. I love that guy. Thank you again to X Pac for being a part of the show. Hope you guys all enjoyed him, and hope you guys check out his podcast. And whenever he's in your area, check him out. He's one of the good guys. And it's always interesting. I never know because he's got such an interesting life. And I always love talking to him about his stuff. But then he's always got such a good take on stuff, too. I never know which direction to go in with him. So thanks again to X Pac. You can follow him on Twitter at @TheRealXPac. And by the by, if you're looking for something to give as a Christmas gift this year to somebody, might I recommend a Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast t-shirt, a Not Sam t-shirt, a Boo the Bad Guys t-shirt, whatever you need. It's all at notsam.com/merch. You can also get there by going to prowrestlingtees.com/Sam Roberts. That's notsam.com/merch. I appreciate everybody that took advantage of the Black Friday sale. There were a whole bunch of you, and I love seeing that. Make sure you tweet them out when you get your shirts. Tweet out your photos. I'll retweet you. If I see you on the street, you're going to get a high five. It's all going to be so amazing. You're just not going to know what to do with yourself. But I know that you know that I know that you know what to do with yourself right now, and what you should be doing with yourself is get prepared. Because it is now time for this week's State of Wrestling.
It's now time for this week's State of Wrestling.
Here we are. It's State of Wrestling time on Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast. And as per usual, we're doing it live on Facebook, so I'll be going to some of your comments. If you want to be part of State of Wrestling Live when we do it, then make sure that you're friends with me or you like me on Facebook at facebook.com/notsam. We do it every Wednesday afternoon at some point. I don't have a specific time in mind, but if you like me on Facebook, they'll send you an alert. You'll get to see the video. It'll be all good. Listen. I've got to level with you here. We were all a big part of history this week. All of us were a big part of history. There are moments in the world of pro wrestling when we look back on it and you say, do you remember where you were? Do you remember where you were when the Macho Man Randy Savage told Hulk Hogan, you got lust in your eyes, brother? You remember where you were? Of course you do. Of course you do. Do you remember where you were when Shawn Michaels made the boyhood dream come true and then lost his smile? Of course you remember where you were. We all remember where we were when these things happen. Do you remember where you were when Shawn Michaels kicked Marty Jannetty through the barbershop window? All of us do. Do you remember where you were when Jake the Snake was killed by the earthquake? Of course, any of us growing up then remember these things. And this week, we've got one. This week, the Generation Y, the Millennials, we got our next. They got their first barbershop window moment. For the rest of time, people will ask you, where were you when Mojo lost his hype? Where were you when there was no more hype, bro. Mojo Rawley turns on Zack Ryder this week on SmackDown, and oh my God, I couldn't believe it. Of course, I think we all thought that the natural thing was going to be that Zack Ryder was going to turn on Mojo, right? I think that's where everybody saw it going. To see Mojo just mid-promo, Zack Ryder is sitting there. He's talking about, like, something's got to change. Mojo made something change. Mojo drops him down. I think that this was the right move because Zack Ryder, as much as they try with Mojo Rawley, Zack Ryder is the more popular of the two. They give Mojo the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal trophy. Nobody remembers that. But everybody remembers a year before that, Zack Ryder on top of I think it was a year before that, Zack Ryder, yeah, definitely, on top of the ladder with the Intercontinental Championship. Still, and that should be part of it, right? I want to hear Mojo say, I won. I was hyped. I was hyped for years, and I told all of you to stay hype, and you never did. You were never hype enough. I was always the most hype. And I was in here wrestling. All you were doing was sitting there looking at me. And you weren't staying hype. No matter how hard I asked you to stay hype, you wouldn't. Then I go and I win the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. And what do you do? What do you do? You don't even remember. You act like it's no big deal. You turn around, but we've got action figures of Zack Ryder climbing that ladder. Oh, we've got T-shirts of Zack Ryder climbing that ladder. Oh, we're looking at that moment of Zack Ryder slapping the ridiculous cowboy hat off of his dad's head over and over and over again on highlight reels. But what do we got? Where is the trophy? I don't even get to bring the Andre trophy to the ring anymore. When you think of WrestleMania, it was just months ago. You talk about the Hardy Boys returning. You talk about John Cena proposing marriage. You talk about The Undertaker being retired by Roman Reigns, but nobody ever talks about Mojo. What about me? What about Mojo? Well, I took destiny into my own hands. I took my hype and I unleashed it on the ungrateful bro, Zack Ryder. That's what I want to hear. That's what I want to hear from Mojo Rawley. And I see they say, well, Mojo won the Battle Royal on the kickoff show. Zack Ryder won on the main show. It doesn't make a difference. I mean, you could say Mojo could bring that up. They didn't even put my Battle Royal on the main show. I'm sorry Shaq wasn't in it. All we had was Rob Gronkowski. I eliminated the former WWE champion Jinder Mahal, and what do I get for my troubles? Partnered up with this goon from Long Island. I loved it. I love the idea. And look, I feel like this will be Mojo's last shot, really. This will be Mojo's last shot. There's really not much else for Mojo to do. He's had every chance in the world to be, he's gotten every opportunity, right? He got the Battle Royal. He got a shot to be a pretty major tag team, and they were never the champions, but the Hype Bros got plenty of screen time on SmackDown and on NXT. He's had singles matches. When Zack Ryder was out with the injury, they certainly tried to push Mojo in the direction of singles. And by the way, right before he went out with the injury, they were making the Hype Bros #1 contenders. So the Hype Bros were, for a moment at least, a big tag team. I feel like SmackDown did more with the Hype Bros than they did with American Alpha. And that's not a compliment to SmackDown, but I'm just saying that you can't sit there and say that they haven't tried with Mojo. Then they give him the Andre Battle Royal win. And they've done a lot by him. Now he gets to have the big heel turn. He gets to turn on Zack Ryder. He has the story. The story of the end of the Hype Bros is all about Mojo. So now is the moment. I see people in the comment section already. They're saying, I hate Mojo. I hate Mojo. Well, a lot of people do. Maybe that'll work in his favor. Maybe he'll really make you hate him. Maybe he'll make you hate him the way you hate bad guy wrestlers. The way bad guys wrestlers are supposed to be hated. Who knows? It's not necessarily bad news. It's not, I think that in terms, this only benefits Mojo. Because if Zack Ryder had turned on Mojo, Zack Ryder would have been heel. He would have been a bad guy for about a cup of coffee. He probably would have beaten Mojo, and then he would have been a good guy again. And Mojo would have just been trying to get his, like, hey, guys, let's keep staying hype. This is the best possible outcome for Mojo Rawley. So we'll see where it goes. It's one of those things where, like, after he has some matches with Zack Ryder, I don't know. But SmackDown's a weird place right now. SmackDown is an odd landscape. We could end up in a scenario where we see Mojo Rawley challenging for the WWE Championship against Jinder Mahal. Like, that could be a WWE Championship match in the era that we're living in right now. That's the craziness. That's the craziness that we live in. Mojo can have some great heat, is what they're saying. Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. But we'll see. I do think that it's the right move. If you're gonna put Mojo, do anything with Mojo. If you're gonna split up the Hype Bros, Zack Ryder's gonna be fine. Zack Ryder's got his place. Mojo is the guy that needs something to push that story along. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Big news that broke this week was, if you remember a few months back, I had Cody Rhodes here on the podcast. And this was right when Cody Rhodes had started his Twitter argument with Dave Meltzer. And Cody Rhodes, at that moment, when he was arguing with Meltzer on Twitter, this is how weird and self-aware pro wrestling has become. That Cody Rhodes is arguing with Dave Meltzer on Twitter, and it's inspired him to turn around and do something new in the world of pro wrestling. Like, there is no real and fake. There's no scripted and non-scripted. It's all just wrestling at this point. So he's arguing with Dave Meltzer about filling a 10,000-seat arena, because Cody Rhodes, for a while now, has been on this push of Ring of Honor being kind of where it's at. It was interesting because Cody for a long time was saying that he wasn't interested in signing anything exclusive with any organization because he'd been there and he'd done that. And then all of a sudden he turns around one day and he announces he's got an exclusive deal with Ring of Honor. And that's when he really starts to push and take seriously his role with Ring of Honor, with the Bullet Club, with the Young Bucks, with that whole thing. That's when that push really started moving forward. So, the speculation, Cody Rhodes believes in this 10,000-seat idea. The Young Bucks believe in this 10,000-seat idea, but it didn't seem like it was something Ring of Honor really wanted to do. Ring of Honor has figured out what it is that they do well. Ring of Honor has figured out how it is that they make their money. They have their business plan. So the last thing that they want to do is throw everybody off base and say, like, okay, now we're playing these big buildings, because, number one, they're not used to getting 10,000 people to go to shows. A big show is like, 3,000 people. If they get 3,000 people in a building, it's a huge, huge success. And number two, if they do 10,000 seats, because of what 10,000 seats looks like, I think if Ring of Honor does 10,000 seats, the expectation becomes, okay, this is where they do their big shows. NXT TakeOver. The first couple NXT TakeOvers were done at Full Sail, the same place where they did their TV. I think the first NXT TakeOver that took place in a big venue was the first TakeOver Brooklyn, if I'm not mistaken, at the Barclays Center. And they were planning on blacking out most of the building. That was the one where they had Sasha Banks and Bayley, Kevin Owens versus Finn Balor in a ladder match. Like, it was really an amazing, amazing time for NXT. That was probably the peak of NXT so far. But they end up selling out the whole building. They thought that they were going to black out most of it, and when they realized what the demand was, they changed it all up. So, but the only caveat to that was, after you saw what NXT TakeOver Brooklyn looked like, TV was fine for Full Sail. But when a big NXT event was happening after that, you kind of had to do it in a big arena. Like that big arena feel, because otherwise it's like a step backwards. Otherwise it feels like a step backwards if you're not doing these big venues. So that, I think, might be something that Ring of Honor is worried about, that you can't If you're Ring of Honor, you can't do a 10,000 seat venue once. That doesn't really prove anything. If you're Ring of Honor and you do, like, for instance, Final Battle in a 10,000 seat venue, well, then people are going to expect, a pay-per-view in March or April. At least by June, at least within the next 6 months, you should be back in a 10,000 seat venue. And then next year at Final Battle, you should be in a 10,000 seat venue, and so on and so forth. And I don't think that's something Ring of Honor wanted to commit to, and I can understand that from a business point. However, because those Bullet Club boys are so damn goal-oriented, or so damn ambitious, it wasn't good enough for them. So Cody Rhodes and the Young Bucks this week announced that they are going to fund a show themselves. Cody Rhodes and the Young Bucks are going to put on a show on their own. Obviously, they'll have the permission of Ring of Honor because all three of those guys are signed to exclusive Ring of Honor deals within the United States. So, and I think that Ring of Honor would be smart to allow them to do this because what it means is, obviously the Ring of Honor title would be defended. You'd surely have a lot of Ring of Honor talent on the show alongside the Young Bucks and Cody Rhodes. But since you don't have Ring of Honor as the promoter per se, Ring of Honor is not expected to continuously draw 10,000 people. So I think it's smart for Ring of Honor to take a step back on this and allow Cody and the Young Bucks to do it on their own. Because at the end of the day, they don't have to take the risk, and it still ends up being that big commercial for Ring of Honor. Really, anything that the Young Bucks and Cody Rhodes do right now is all just a free commercial for Ring of Honor. Ring of Honor is the organization that really wins from everything that these guys are doing. Everything. So I'm anxious to see, and honestly, like, at the moment, it feels like almost everything Cody Rhodes and the Young Bucks do turn to gold. I think that they're very strategic in their marketing, and very strategic in the things that they take on. And before, they're not... In the old days of wrestling, and you still see that, the traditional wrestling mentality is to kind of overpromise and underdeliver, to just hype something up and hype it up and hype it up just to get the headlines and get the buzz going, and then hopefully everybody forgets what you promised before you actually have to deliver it. We've seen it 10,000 times in the world of wrestling. But that's not the game that the Young Bucks and Cody Rhodes play. The reason that the Young Bucks and Cody Rhodes are different, the reason that the Elite are different, and Being the Elite is a huge show on YouTube, and the reason why that group feels so different is because they make the fans feel like the fans are inside the joke. They make the fans feel like it's the Young Bucks, it's Cody Rhodes, and it's the fans of them. It's us that are playing a joke on the people that aren't watching. Whether it's playing a joke on the WWE or playing a joke on the general public or whatever it is. They make it so that it's like we're stooging on the corporations. It's the Young Bucks and Cody and Kenny and us. And Paige and us. And we are getting one over on the guys that said that we weren't going to be able to do any of this, which is brilliant marketing, and there's a lot of truth to it as well. I think that the Young Bucks have a sense of gratitude towards the fans because they've been they've had all this success, and it has been crowd-funded. It hasn't been this big sort of corporate umbrella that's put them there. And Cody Rhodes, I would imagine, has to be pouring with gratitude because he's the guy that left the umbrella. He stepped out into the rain. No guarantees, no nothing, and has become, 10 times as big a star as he ever was in maybe not 10 times, but 3 times as big a star as he ever was in WWE out on the indies. So, which is, by the way, when he finally does gonna get back to WWE, boy, is that gonna change things for him. See what I'm doing with my fingers? I'm making a sign like money. So, I love that Cody and the Young Bucks are doing this, and I don't think that they would be doing it if they didn't see how it was possible. I think they listed a few cities that they might do it in. I think they're looking at Canada, they're looking at London, they're looking at Chicago. They're looking at... New York was not on the list. I think Sacramento might have been one of the cities they were looking at. But, yeah, I think a couple of things. Number one, I think it's really cool, and I have faith that they're going to be able to pull something off. But number 2, I think this is another thing that is just good for wrestling. And I think it goes back to the point that we were talking about last week or the week before, that WWE's competition. You know, we went for the last however long it's been, 15 years, talking about how the WWE needs competition. The WWE has never been as good as it was when WCW was running head-to-head. What Cody and the Young Bucks are doing with this show, what the Young Bucks are doing with their merch and the way they do things, the way the whole wrestling world is taking shape outside of the WWE, is it's becoming a world into and of itself, where just like, you know, entertainers, right? Guys like me, like, I don't need to have a big NBC logo on Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast. I'm not on any network. I'm not affiliated with any corporation. I just come on here and I talk about wrestling, and I got some cameras, and I was able to build a studio. I got a microphone, and I can go on Facebook, and I can go on YouTube, and I can put out a podcast for free, and I can do whatever I want. I can reach an audience without an entity putting me there if I want to. You know, and if there is an audience for it, you can succeed that way. And those are the lessons that is taking shape in the world of wrestling, where, let's say Ring of Honor folded. We're now creating a model where even if Ring of Honor doesn't even exist, Cody Rhodes, the Young Bucks, guys like that can still figure out how to make a living outside of WWE. And I think that is the huge thing. And that's what becomes competition for WWE. Not in the sense of like, well, people are going to watch one thing or the other, or, well, the ratings are this and the ratings are that. Like, it's not a Monday Night War, but it is this thing of guys have a choice. Guys have a choice. If you're talented and can connect with the audience, if you are sitting there going, I can connect with the audience. The reason I am not connecting with the audience is because WWE, quote unquote, you hear this all the time, won't allow me to be in the position that I should be in. If that is really true, in 2017 and 2018, there is nothing stopping you from getting that audience. If it is really true that the only thing holding you back is WWE, which more often than not is absolutely false. More often than not, the guys that say, well, I went to WWE and they didn't use me right, so I left, you don't hear from them again. Because WWE was using them right. They were just overconfident. More often than not. Of course, there are many exceptions, but more often than not, that's the case. When it's not the case, when it is true that they're not getting used properly, that there is nothing stopping these guys from going out there and making their own money and getting in front of their own audience. And now, you don't even need somebody else to put the ring up, because Cody Rhodes and the Young Bucks are printing this blueprint for you, where you can promote your own shows now. Because these guys, like, all you have to do, look, any money that I get from the podcast, I reinvest back into what we're doing here with Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast and Not Sam. The studio here is built by what I'm doing. There's no, you reinvest because you see what that vision is for the future. If you have a vision for yourself and you've made a bunch of money wrestling, but you don't feel like you've hit your potential, then why not use that money that you've made wrestling to rent out a big building and go on the way you think you should be going on, and get your money back if you're that good. Make a whole bunch more money, because then it's your house. You're not waiting for somebody to divvy out a portion of it for you. It's yours. That's what Pat Buck did at WrestlePro. Pat Buck wasn't getting his opportunities when he was working with developmental in WWE, and that's fine. So what did he do? How do you make how do you make a living? How do you make money in this world of wrestling without somebody putting you there? Well, you put yourself there, because that's the age that we're living in. It's not that difficult anymore. You put yourself there. And so Pat Buck said, okay, well, even if I'm not getting booked on every indie show that I want to be on, I'll just start my own promotion then. And I'll start my own wrestling school that will feed into my own promotion. And the wrestling school makes money and the promotion makes money, and you're making a living wrestling. in wrestling. And there's 150,000 different ways to do it that suits different guys. But Cody Rhodes and the Young Bucks are demonstrating why in 2018 there is absolutely no reason to just assume that your fate lies in the hand of anyone else. You know, you got a guy like Austin Aries, who's I don't know why he left WWE. I would love to get him on the podcast and talk to him about it. But if he left on his own accord, then fine. There's nothing that's stopping him from becoming a bigger star than he ever was in WWE. I see Devin on the Facebook chat. He says it's moronic to think that the WWE would spend all this money on bringing in and developing talent just to bury them. You know, I don't. Yeah, there's no logic behind that. I don't think that WWE hires people just to bury them. You know, I think that maybe there are times when WWE has an idea for somebody and it doesn't pan out. They don't see it. It's not working with their audience. And people do end up not getting used the way they should. And sometimes it's right and sometimes it's wrong. You know, you can look at what's happening with a guy like Finn Balor right now. Like, would Finn Balor be, you know, getting beat up by Kane every week on Raw? If I had my way? No, I don't understand that. But I don't. If I'm going to complain about that, I should raise some money and start my own promotion. See if I can get Finn Balor to come work for me instead. I'll make you win every match. And he's like, yeah, but guess what? You're not going to pay me like WWE's paying me. Okay, yeah, maybe you're right. maybe you're right. But yeah, you know, I think that's the world that we're living in, and it's a beautiful time because this world of, well, guys only have one option. You may not have direct competition in the sense of head-to-head competition, but you cannot convince me that professional wrestlers only have one option. No way. No way. Nobody in entertainment, whether it's sports entertainment or otherwise, has only one option. There's so much out there now, and it's so easy to get your hands on it. And that's being proven by guys on a regular basis. So a big thing that happened in reference to this show is over on the Sirius XM show, Busted Open. Cody Rhodes, I think he called in, and he said the guy that he would really like to wrestle at the show where he's trying to get 10,000 people in is Daniel Bryan. Now, if I was putting on a show where I was going to be in the main event and I was responsible for getting 10,000 seats, I would really like to wrestle Daniel Bryan. That's the guy that I would like to wrestle too. It's really, really, really going to be interesting with Daniel Bryan in the coming months, I would say, because if you listen to the interview he did here on the podcast, 2 weeks ago or so, it's clear he wants to wrestle in WWE. If Daniel Bryan, and he said that on the podcast, go back 2 weeks and listen. If Daniel Bryan had a choice of what ring he would wrestle in again, it would be a WWE ring. The only reason that he would wrestle outside of WWE is if, for corporate reasons, he is not allowed to wrestle. For legal reasons, he is not allowed to wrestle in WWE. If that is the case, I could certainly see him wrestling Cody Rhodes in that building. I don't know when his contract ends. I don't know when. I don't know any of the logistics behind that, and I don't know when Cody is thinking that he and the Young Bucks are going to put this show on. I think that if it is a Cody Rhodes Daniel Bryan match, and it's Daniel Bryan's, one of his first matches back in the ring, not only do I think it'll sell 10,000 seats, I'm going to end up on a plane flying to some city in God knows where just so I can watch the thing, because I think it'd be amazing. Amazing. I would love to see Cody Rhodes versus Daniel Bryan in a match where it's up to them. Meaning there's nobody sitting there going like, okay, this is what we want to do. Somebody's saying February 2018 is when the Daniel Bryan's contract is up. Again, I have no clue. It could be. It could be. I have no reason not to believe you, but I mean, I have no idea. But I think to see Cody versus Bryan Danielson, where There were no, metaphorical handcuffs on them. It was just go out there and do whatever you guys want to do for as long as you want to do it. We would see a catharsis. We would see, it would be like souls leaving bodies. It would be guys that for so long wanted to show everything that they could do, and that would be the match where those two guys could really show everything that they could do. This show is kind of like Tidal, right? When they announced Tidal, the music streaming service, the hook on it was that the artists that were involved were going to have ownership to it. Meaning, it's not just a matter of like, okay, like my songs are on Spotify, so I get a cut of the action. Okay, my songs are on Apple Music, so I get a cut of the action. No, you're getting a cut of the company. You're a part owner. And I think that's probably what this show will end up being, what the 10,000 seat thing will end up being. It'll be a thing where the Young Bucks and Cody are putting it on, but the big names that come in are not just going to get paid to do a shot. I think they're going to end up with partial ownership of whatever this thing is that's built. And I think that that's the way to handle it. That's the best way to handle it. But yeah, I mean, the idea, I personally, I would far prefer to see Daniel Bryan wrestle in WWE. And that's because I'm a WWE fan. Like, if I had my choice, because I want to see, there are 3 matches that I want to see in a WWE ring. I want to see Daniel Bryan versus Brock Lesnar. I want to see Daniel Bryan versus Shinsuke Nakamura. And I want to see an Iron Man match. I want to see not a 60-minute, I want to see a 90-minute Iron Man match. 90. Maybe 75. Give the guys a break. Somewhere between 75 and 90 minutes, an Iron Man match between AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan at a WrestleMania. Those are the matches that I want to see, and I want to see them in a WWE ring. I don't want to see them at the Tokyo Dome. I don't want to see them at the ECW arena. Like, I want to see them in a WWE ring, because to me, and I don't know if you guys feel the same way, to me, it makes it more special when it happens in a WWE ring, and I think that it always will. Part of what made the moments in Survivor Series, whether you like what happened by the end of that 5-on-5 match or not, I think a lot of people did not, just because of the stories that were forgotten in the thing, but seeing moments of Shinsuke Nakamura and Triple H, Bobby Roode and Triple H, John Cena and whoever, like, in a WWE ring with WWE guys, it makes it more special because it's these things that you never thought would happen. That's what's special. So that's what that would ideally what I would like to see. But that said, if Daniel Bryan does not wrestle in the WWE ring again, as much as I think it would be a tragedy, wrestling Cody Rhodes in front of 10,000 people in a moment that would be monumental for independent wrestling in the United States, it would be incredible. It would be absolutely incredible. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I see one person, do you think WWE will release Bryan rather than let him wrestle? It's not a matter of releasing him. Contracts expire. So it'll be WWE at some point, I would think, would have to say, hey, man, your contract's up. We want to re-sign you. We want to keep you as the general manager. We simply can't let you wrestle. And that's another thing Daniel Bryan made clear in the podcast, that it's not a matter of WWE holding him back and saying, we don't want you to wrestle. WWE wants Daniel Bryan to wrestle. They can't let him wrestle right now. So it would be a matter of the contract expiring and saying, look, we want to keep you, but we cannot let you wrestle. And that would be the moment that Daniel would probably say, well, then I've got to say farewell for the time being then. I got to go out there and do what it is that I want to do. So, we'll see. It'll be really, really, really interesting. Speaking of live shows and interesting ways of doing things, so the WWE business used to revolve around live shows. Used to. That used to be the mark of success. When you would wake up before Monday Night Raw, even a little bit in the early days of Monday Night Raw, but we're talking like the very early 90s, the 80s. You would wake up on Saturday, you'd watch your cartoons, and then at noon, for me anyway, it was time for Wrestling Superstars. Sunday, you'd have All American Wrestling on at 11 a.m. on USA, and then Wrestling Challenge on at noon on Fox 5, right? And then Monday, you'd get primetime wrestling. But you wouldn't have any big matches on those shows. It'd be mainly enhancement talent taking on big names. It would just be coming up next, the British Bulldog in action, Demolition in action. Like in action was to say that like you'd have one marquee talent and it would really just be an exhibition for look how cool these guys are. But the purpose of these TV shows was simply to announce, hey, we got a live show coming to town. Hey, you want to see this big match? You better buy a ticket to see the live show. And even the pay-per-views. You know, at the beginning of the pay-per-views, it was still kind of designed to sell people on a live event. And think about all the big feuds that we never saw on pay-per-view. You know, we watched TV hype up The Undertaker versus The Ultimate Warrior. That was never on a pay-per-view, but it toured the country. Hulk Hogan versus Ric Flair was never on a pay-per-view, but they did it on house shows. I don't think you ever saw Jake the Snake Roberts versus The Earthquake. You never saw Jake the Snake Roberts versus Macho Man, except I guess Tuesday in Texas. But does that really count as a pay-per-view? You know, that was kind of a bonus. But really, that match was all about the house shows. And you can see the WWE put out an unreleased DVD, and you can see some of those matches. They're like these super matches that you're like, oh, that never happened. But it did. It was on the Ultimate Warrior versus Andre the Giant, you know? Matches like that, Macho Man versus Andre the Giant, matches like that were all on the live events because that's what the business was all about. Now, not so much. Of course, that's a huge part of business, but there's far more money in merchandising, in television sponsorships, it used to be in pay-per-views, but in network subscriptions, in corporate, partnerships, the deal with E on Total Diva, like all kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of new ways to make money. So it's not all about the live events. So really, the live events are more like, hey, these big TV stars, you can pay to see them do what they do on TV. You usually don't go to a live event and see a match that you wouldn't see on TV or a pay-per-view just because the business has changed so much. But, and it says here, sort of the NXT model. A little bit, but the NXT model generally shifts towards takeovers, right? Generally, you don't have big NXT stories that are solved at NXT live events. They're generally solved at takeovers. But yeah, you see big matches at NXT live events that you wouldn't necessarily see on NXT television. That said, that all changed this weekend when WWE went to Greensboro, North Carolina, and put on Starrcade. Starrcade, and it was so frustrating because the reason why you can't, in 2018, in 2017, you can't do that. You can't, your money can't be reliant on live events anymore. That's just a part of it, is because everybody knows what happens at the live events now. Everything that happens is potentially a global event. They had a storyline on Total Divas a couple weeks ago where Naomi was like, oh, I put all this light up stuff on my women's championship title, and I'm just going to try it out at this house show. And then Talent Relations got mad at Naomi because they saw a picture on Instagram. Now, did that really happen that way? I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and break Total Divas kayfabe, but point is that you can't just do something on a house show because all that somebody needs to do is post a pic, put it on the gram, and it's everywhere. It's on every website, so you can't really do that anymore. But lo and behold, Starrcade goes down in Greensboro, North Carolina, and because we're so used to live event stuff not being exclusive, we're not used to being excluded. We're not used to it being like, well, if you don't see it live, you don't see it. We're like, what? What? We live in a world of participation trophies. You think we're going to settle for just being like, well, if you're not there, you don't get to see it? No, that's not fair. That's not fair. Is that cool? That's what people were saying. That's what I was saying on Twitter as we watched Starrcade. People have been asking me, why wasn't Starrcade a live event? I mean, on the network. And I really think that it's just because it costs a lot of money to put something on the WWE network. Personally, I think that it should have been on the WWE network. I think that that's what the WWE Network should be about. You know, I think that the documentaries they do are great. The Kevin Owens 365 I really like. The Goldberg WWE 24 I really like. I really like both those shows, and I really like them for different reasons. I thought, you know, the Kevin Owens 365 is so good because you really get a sense of how much the opinion of Vince McMahon means to these guys. That it's not just a matter of like, oh, I want to do something, but Vince won't let me. It's a matter of like, I want to please Vince McMahon because this is his sandpit and we're playing in it, and I want to make sure that he likes what I'm doing. And you got that from Kevin Owens. And I just thought it was really, really interesting and a side of things that you normally don't get to see. So I think that's what the network should be about. But, you know, I think that they could get away with even charging more for like at least the big 4 or big 5 pay-per-views and then throwing on some more of these live events. In fact, instead of shaping things like everything's a pay-per-view, I some of my favorite stuff, like I love the Beast in the East. I love the stuff that they televise from Madison Square Garden when it feels like a live event, not like a pay-per-view. And it's just the special thing you're broadcasting. The set is lower in scale than usual. You don't have the big pay-per-view set. I think that's awesome. And I think you could get away with charging people more for pay-per-views if we knew that every few months there was going to be some really cool live show that we were going to get to see on the network. I think something like Starrcade that we would never see, 2017, that we would never see on television makes the WWE Network feel exclusive. So I think it should have been on. I see some person saying he'd pay $19.99 a month for the network. Yeah, I think, and Lewis is saying, why does it cost so much if WWE owns the network? Well, you have to pay money to buildings if you're going to tape TV in them. It costs a lot more money to tape a TV show in an arena than just to do a live show. It just does, like the rent for taping a TV show, whether it's live or taped, is much more expensive if you're doing that. On top of that, they own the network, but it is very expensive to broadcast for them, for WWE. It is very expensive to broadcast live on the network. I don't know how much, but to stream something out live so that we can all watch it live without glitches is really, really, really expensive. I mean, that's why Netflix doesn't do live stuff. Everything is just archived on Netflix. They save a lot of money that way because it's extremely expensive to send stuff out live. You know, really, quite a bit. So that's what I think the majority of it is. But that said, you know, seeing the 2 cage matches that were like old school, I thought was really cool. Even if, you know, they said that they had to build the cage. So the show is headlined by Natalya versus Charlotte in a cage. And I think AJ Styles versus Jinder. Was that the WWE Championship match? I think that was the WWE Championship match. And that was also in a cage. And they did those 2 cage matches back to back because they had to take an intermission because they actually had to build the cage. It didn't come down from the ceiling, is what I read. Which is awesome. I would love to see that on the network because back in the day, they would run house shows on like here in New York. When they ran Madison Square Garden, they would sometimes run the show on the Madison Square Garden network, which is different than what we're talking about because the Madison Square Garden network had a deal. So the WWE would actually offer programming to the network affiliated with the arena. So the cost of airing it was not the WWE's cost, if that makes sense. But like they would take an intermission in the broadcast to build the cage. And it was okay because it was just local cable. Like it was regional. And it would be okay if like you took a break in the broadcast to build the cage and maybe whoever was doing commentary at ringside could just kind of, you know, banter about for a little bit while the cage was built. And it would be okay that it wasn't moving super, super snappy because it's on the network, right? Because it's not about ratings. It's not about, you know, making sure that nobody tunes out every 15 minutes. It's streaming. It's on the network. It's for everybody. I just think it would be cool to see. What about charging something like $5 or $10 for one of these special house shows to watch on the network? I don't think that would be right. I think it would. I think if you charge $5 or $10 for the pay-per-views, but you had free house shows on the network, every like 3 months or so, then you're talking about a business model. That I think would work. I don't think that charging extra for the live events would work. But yeah, so I was bummed out. I thought it was cool. I wanted to see the back-to-back steel cages. And then watching Arn Anderson. Did you see that? Go look it up on YouTube if you didn't see it. Watching Arn Anderson do an amazing, like a perfect spine buster onto Dolph Ziggler at that show and then he did the perfect rollout of the spine buster was awesome. Seeing Dustin Rhodes come out as Dustin Rhodes, he had the Goldust robe on, and then the music cut off, and he takes the robe off, and he's got his old Dustin Rhodes clothes on, and the natural music starts playing. Oh, well, they call him the naturally. Awesome. Just such a cool thing, and I'm jealous of everybody in Greensboro that got to experience that. And I hope that there's more cool shows like that WWE does, and they reconsider the investment of putting it on WWE Network and try to maybe reallocate costs somewhere else. Let's talk about a little bit about what went on Raw and SmackDown this week. Of course, we talked about the big thing, Mojo's big heel turn, but I thought listening to the crowd reaction on Raw was really, really interesting. Roman Reigns was getting, and maybe it was just because of the town they were in, I don't know, but Roman Reigns was getting a lot more cheers even without the Shield than he was getting before the Shield. And Miz, did you hear the reaction that the Miz's theme song got? Cheers, 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 cheers. The Miz, when he gets back from filming The Marine, has got to do something very bad guy-ish, because otherwise people are going to start cheering him, because he is just so good. I thought that the Kane and Braun Strowman stuff was a little bit been there, done that. It was a little bit like, okay, yeah, I don't know how many times I'm going to see. It doesn't sit that well with me watching Kane beat Finn Balor on a regular basis just so we can watch Braun Strowman beat up Kane on a regular basis. I don't think it adds anything to Kane. Like, we don't have to be reminded that he can beat people. He's kind of gained that notoriety in the years. Like, Kane never has to reestablish himself. Just showing up again, it's like, oh, cool, Kane's back. So, kicking the crap out of Finn Balor doesn't really do anything for Kane, especially since, every week on Raw now, it's just Braun Strowman comes out and beats him up. And I guess last week Kane beat him up, but, like, he put him through the ring. He left him laying this week. Like, at what point are we done? Also, I'm confused as to where this Kane thing is going. I can't imagine that it's going to last all the way to the Royal Rumble. There's no Raw pay-per-view between now and the Royal Rumble. So I thought that at the Royal Rumble we were going to see a Triple H Braun Strowman match. I still kind of think that we will. I think that that's where it's going. But I don't know where the payoff comes with Kane. I see somebody saying that he thought that the tease of broken Matt Hardy had a poor reaction. Well, I think that the only reason that the crowd was a little bit lackluster when Matt started teasing broken Matt was because it's been a long time, and more importantly, the real reason was because we've kind of hinted at broken Matt since WrestleMania, since March or April. We've been hinting at broken Matt, like that delete thing. That wasn't the first time we've seen that. It was the first time we've seen it repeatedly, but it wasn't the first time that he's like made reference to delete. It wasn't the first time that he slipped into the broken Matt character in promos. I think that in order for broken Matt to really get a reaction, he's really going to have to morph into this character. And they were laying it on thick on Raw. Like, they were like, are we seeing the beginning of a breakdown for Matt Hardy? Like, if we're hearing that, I would imagine that we are seeing some kind of broken Matt Hardy, which is good for two reasons. Number one, I love broken Matt. Hey, you could go back at I think the first podcast that Broken Matt did as Broken Matt was this one. You can find it in the back catalog of Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast. And because it meant Bray Wyatt got a win. And whenever Bray Wyatt gets a win, I'm in favor of it. I think it's a good thing. It's ironic that the reason the original broken character was a result of Jeff being injured, and now the same thing is happening in WWE. Yeah, it really is. I mean, And Dino says that the broken Matt ship has sailed. They waited too long. It's possible. I hope not. I don't think so. I think Matt Hardy deserves a lot more credit than people give him for being having an amazing brain for wrestling. And I think that he won't just redo Broken Matt Hardy and expect that everybody's just been sitting there with bated breath waiting for 8 months for this thing to come back. I think that he'll change it up a little bit to try to recapture some of that magic. But it is interesting. It feels like the trick to seeing Broken Matt Hardy wrestling is his brother being injured. Who knew? Who knew? Well, you know what? You get lemons, you make lemonade. That's what you do. What else happened? I thought Elias had a great match, but I think Elias is great. I think he's severely underrated. And I think he's just awesome. I really think he's awesome. And I like the idea of Samoa Joe as as Roman Reigns' opponent. And I think that that's interesting. The two Samoan Joes. I think that could be cool. It'll be interesting to see who Broken Matt ends up having a rivalry with. Maybe Bray. You know, Sister Abigail versus Pumpkin Spice Finn Balor, Pumpkin Spice is the Broken Matt versus Bray Wyatt is a better pairing, I think, for both guys. So we'll see about that. Over on the SmackDown side, we talked about it last week, and I talked about it with Wade Keller on his podcast last week, but it's clear that they're building tension between Daniel Bryan and Shane McMahon, and I think they're doing it really, really well. They're kind of building a nice, long story arc there. You have got to give props to what AJ Styles did with the Singh brothers. The Styles clash off the top rope onto the other Jinder head. Like, that's difficult to do without hurting anybody. And I just thought it looked cool. It was amazing. We should talk about the women. Somebody's saying I want Sasha Banks heel. I don't think that Sasha Banks is going to turn heel anytime soon because we got bad guy women. We got 6 of them across 2 separate rosters. We've got the Riot Squad, right? And we've got Absolution. When the Riot Squad announced themselves as the Riot Squad and didn't just announce themselves also as Absolution, it's just that little thing. If they had just said, we're Absolution, and you realize, like, oh my God, Absolution has infected both brands, then you're like, it's like goosebumps. You're like, oh my God, that's awesome. But when it's just 2 squads of women that are just kind of the same thing on different brands, you're like, what? And it sucks for the Riot Squad, because I love the people that are in it. I think all 3 women are awesome in the Riot Squad, and I'm really happy all 3 are on SmackDown. But because Monday comes before Tuesday, every episode of SmackDown, the last 2, and I think it's going to continue, are going to feel like the Riot Squad is a rehash of what we saw last night. Because they look the same, because their motives are the same, because it's all, you know, we went from an invasion on Raw, an invasion on SmackDown. A 6-woman tag on Raw that has a schmaz, a 6-person tag on SmackDown that has a schmaz. You know, it's like, I don't know what the end game to doing the same thing on both shows is. You know, it doesn't make sense to me, and it would be a little thing. Calling them both Absolution would be your answer to me. To me, that's how you get there. And I think everybody, Absolution, the name is a little better, and the trio is better only because Paige is so much more experienced, right? Paige is really good, I think, as far as delivering promos go. Sonya Deville, her look is awesome, and it feels modern, and you don't have anything like that. And I was looking at Mandy Rose, and somebody emailed me about Mandy Rose and what I thought of her. I think she's amazing. And I think she's so much more than your first reaction, because your first reaction is just like, oh, cool. It's like bombshell hot blonde, right? But then, like, you look at her physique and the way she stands, and like you see her muscles and stuff, and you realize that she looks like a power lifter. And they've never had somebody that looks like that they're that muscular and that hot at the same time. Like it's a very appealing combination. It's not something that you see. It's different, and different's always good. It's just not, and I think that she has a ton of potential. I think if she can do well in the ring, we haven't seen a full-fledged match in a WWE ring with her yet. We saw him in NXT. She's good, and we saw him on Tough Enough. And I think that everybody was rooting for her on Tough Enough because she seemed like she really wanted it. And I have high hopes. And I think that the three on SmackDown are amazing. This has been a long time coming for Liv Morgan. She's been in NXT forever and has really been working on this. I would change the music. I think that I get why it's punk because it's Ruby Riott. She's the leader, and it's the Riot Squad, and that's all good. But it sounds happy. It sounds like pop punk. It sounds like a version of Simple Plan with no lyrics in it. Like it doesn't sound bad. Like bad guys. It doesn't sound like people that are there to put Naomi in the hospital. Just a little more grit to it, a little less happy, and I think it would go a long way. But it's really kind of simple. It's just call them the same name. If you call them the same name, eventually you could maybe figure out one leader that's behind both factions. But you could pull a wrestling move on that one. Figure it out later. Don't worry about all that right now. But if you call them different names, one is copying the other, or you're just doing the same thing on both shows. If you call them the same name, well then, now you've got one faction, invading both. I just think it's a no-brainer to me. I see one suggestion here from John's, take 205 off and make an exclusive women's show. I think that would start to confuse the brands. Like, if you're going to put women on Raw and SmackDown, you can't then also have them on their own separate show, because then you could have a storyline between Charlotte and Mickie James on the exclusive women's show, and then you get to SmackDown, and Charlotte is talking about Mickie James, and you're like, but Mickie James is on Raw. It just would get way too confusing. I see somebody bringing up Dana Brooke. I think Mandy Rose might be what they wanted when they got Dana Brooke, to tell you the truth. And not trying to throw shade at Dana Brooke. I think she's great, but I think Mandy Rose pops off the TV screen a little bit differently. Nikki Cross be the leader of both teams and have a massive women's stable. I don't mind. I think Nikki Cross would be a great leader of both teams. But again, figure that out later. You don't even need that answer right now. Who cares? Who cares who the leader is? Just get them both to be one team. And that way you don't have to worry about how any of it makes sense. What's with the extra T, asks Sean Weber. I would imagine that they added an extra T for some kind of copyright reason, but I have no actual idea. All right. This has been Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast. I appreciate all you guys listening. It's always fun. Don't forget, if you want to be a part of the Wrestling Podcast live on Facebook, all you have to do is click like on Facebook.com/notsam and be around on Wednesday afternoon. And at some point, I'll pop up and I'll do it live on Facebook. If you don't want to do it on Facebook, that's fine. We're out every Thursday morning. Make sure you're subscribed on iTunes, on Spotify, on Stitcher, on Google Play, whatever your podcast medium of choice is. Subscribe there, and we will be back next week with an all-new Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast. Until then, toodaloo.
Thanks for listening. Follow at notsam on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And subscribe for free to listen every week to Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast.